Hi everyone, good afternoon. This is Elsa Marie De Silva, founder and CEO of Red Dot Foundation. And I'm really thrilled to be here. I am going to share my screen. Great. So I want to thank the Durga team for giving me this opportunity to talk about this really important topic, gender-based violence. And we've just completed the 16 days of activism that is held every year to spotlight this issue. And why is it important? I started on this journey about 8 years ago when I was actually in the aviation industry, and I was woken up from my slumber and my bubble when this young woman, Jyoti Singh, was gang raped on a bus in Delhi. We know her as Nirbhaya, but if you remember at that time, the gang rape, which left her, with a lot of injuries, which ultimately took her life. It made national news, international news. There was a lot of outrage. People took to the streets. And I, for one, started to think more deeply about this issue. And I realized that it was triggering a lot of memories for me, which I had pushed to the back of my mind. And when I turned to Google to make sense of what was happening and find out what was really the size of the problem, all I could find was this one statistic, which unfortunately is till today quoted. That is, 1 in 3 women around the world experience some form of sexual assault at least once in their lifetime. And even if you were to take just this one statistic, 1 in 3 women, that means 33% of women, who constitute 50% of the population, suffer from this. Today, whilst we are going through this COVID-19 pandemic, it's being called sexual violence, sexual and gender-based violence is being called the shadow pandemic. It's been around for a long time. And yet, unfortunately, 80% or more of these incidents are never reported to the police or any official authority. And at the time, 8 years ago, when I started to think about it, my sample size, that means my friend circle and everyone around me who started to share these stories, it seemed like 100% had experienced it and 100% had never reported it. In fact, for the first time, we were discussing it even in our own friend circle. Now, India is a democracy, right? And under our constitution, we as women are guaranteed the right to equality, the right to life, the right to live with dignity, the right to practice any occupation, and the right to a safe environment. And not only is it in our constitution, but India is a signatory to various international conventions that guarantee that, like CEDAW and ILO. We even have SDG 5, which is one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals dedicated to ending discrimination and all forms of violence that is gender-based, and so on and so forth. But what's the reality? If you go to the Niti Aayog site and take our own government's reporting on our SDGs, and every country has to report, right? I've put 2 big arrows for 5 and 11, which is where our work falls in. And you take on the left all the states that we have and their performance. They perform pretty badly on SDG 5. In fact, most of the country is performing below average by our own reporting metrics, except for maybe Kerala and Sikkim. You take any parameter and you will find how it's all interlinked. Now, when we talk of sexual and gender-based violence, it's really a power structure where you prey on the vulnerable. And therefore, why I raised the point about equality was, in reality, we are not equal. Right from birth to death, women are not treated equally, and you're not seen as to be equal. And this is reflected in many different statistics. So take, for example, in leadership positions, in politics, at the legislative assembly level, that means your state governments, women represent less than 9%. If you take at the national level, last year rather, the numbers increased to 14%, and we were very happy because it increased from 11 0.5 to 14%, but that's nowhere near the 50% that we should be represented as. If we are 50% of the population, we should be 50% in parliament, right? I've already spoken about the violence against women, 1 in 3. Take the femicide rate. That means how many girl children are born every year. And we have a national average of 898 female children being born for every 1,000 male children. But there are two states, Andhra Pradesh and Rajasthan, that have an atrocious birth figure of 806 female births for every 1,000 males. And last year in August, Uttarakhand issued a red alert because for 3 months there was not a single girl child born in the 136 villages, despite there being 216 births. That's very troubling if people are killing the girl child. And then you take the wage gap where we are 70% to what a male earns. And then the female participation in the labor force, which year on year is declining, and Deloitte now puts it at 26%. You take the maternal mortality ratio, etc., etc. I've also put the number of courts per population of 10 lakhs. We only have 13 courts at the national level. And why is this important? Because all the crimes against women cannot be fast-tracked because we don't have a robust justice system. And that's something to think about, right? And no wonder then we find ourselves at the bottom of all the lists, most of the lists rather, of peace and security at the Georgetown Institute for Women. We rank 131 amongst 153 countries. World Economic Forum puts us at 108 on their gender gap index, and UNDP lists us at 130 on their human development indicator. And some years ago, Thomson Reuters had a perception survey which listed us as the number 1 most dangerous place for women. And whilst I may not agree with that, we have to think about why do we rank where we do. So I completely agree with my hero, Hillary Clinton, who 25 years ago at the Beijing Conference for Women stated, women's rights are human rights are women's rights. What's the problem? We don't talk enough about it. There's a silence that enwraps this issue, making us stay quiet, whether we are survivors or whether we are bystanders. And even if we are perpetrators, none of us ask for help. We definitely don't understand the whole spectrum of abuse. We get excited and upset and angry when it's rape and assault, but we, on a daily basis, pretty much accept the other forms of it, whether they are non-verbal, like staring, ogling, taking pictures without permission, indecent gestures and exposure, like masturbation in public spaces, verbal assault, like commenting, catcalls, sexual invites, touching, groping, stalking. And this now is not only in the physical world, but also moving into the virtual world. And you see online harassment growing because it's a reflection of how we behave in society. Now, you may think that these are trivial, but in fact, they can be extremely debilitating to many, limiting their choices, their movements, and affecting mental health. And how does it impact a woman or a girl? She may drop out of school. She may not choose to go very far away from her home to go to school or the best school, or she may limit her choice of educational subjects because the subject that she really wants means she has to move cities and her family won't allow her under the guise of safety. Same with a job. Somebody does not take up a job because it involves a lot of travel. The family may use safety as an excuse to keep her at home, and so on and so forth. And it really starts with objectifying someone, degrading them, and finally assaulting them. All of this contributes to a rape culture, which we are all, in a way, abettors to. And in the bargain, what happens is we create this culture of insecurity where victims are silent, they don't report the assault, they feel afraid because they don't want to bring shame to themselves and their families. They don't report, therefore doesn't reflect in the statistics, and the police are not obliged to do anything. They say they don't have any statistics in their official book of records. It never reaches the justice system, and those cases that do, the conviction rate is so low that it doesn't even represent the size and the true size and nature of the problem. And what about all the rest? People who witness these things on a daily basis, they also don't know how to respond, what to do, and they stay silent. They abet the crime, because under Indian law, all of what I showed you as the spectrum of abuse is a crime. And the perpetrator only gets bolder over a period of time, creating this whole culture of disrespect, fear, and further subjugation of women. So my response after Jyoti Singh was to quit my job and start my organization, Red Dot Foundation. But before I registered it, we launched this crowd map called Safe City. It's a web and a mobile app where you can report anonymously your experiences of sexual and gender-based violence. And all these stories are aggregated as location-based trends visualized on a map as hotspots. And this same crowdsourced data is now available open source for you to access it, so that you can make better choices for your safety at the individual level, or engage your communities and institutional service providers like police, elected representatives, and campus authorities to make sure that you have safe environments. You can zoom in right up to the street level. So all these bubbles are actually stories, and you can read these stories, comment on them, but more importantly, use this information to make better choices. Just like you would use, say, TripAdvisor to make a decision on where to stay, when booking your hotels, or you choose a restaurant on Zomato, based on peer reviews. Think of it like that. So how does it help at the individual level? Today, if you wanted crime information, you wouldn't get it from the government. You would have to make what is known as a right to information application to every police station. That's not possible. So in this manner, you can access our site, check out what's happening near you, and make a representation, either with your community, which we are all part of. And we have more power with our communities than by ourselves. For example, often when a survivor talks about the incident she has experienced, people tend to blame her, saying, you were at the wrong place at the wrong time, you were wearing the wrong clothing. But can you really dispute with a data set that shows that the same thing has been happening to 20 people over a 6-month period? Nobody has the time to go and blame each of these individuals, right? We have noticed that the police have changed beat patrol timings, even with 20 data points in a particular location. We've got municipal authorities to fix broken street lighting, because lighting does play a role in the perception of safety. Public toilets seem to be a hotspot in many low-income areas, and they have used the data to, the community has used the data to engage with civic authorities to make sure those toilets are fixed and maintained, and all the infrastructure like doors and windows and lighting is maintained properly. We work with college campus students as ambassadors who are peer educators, but also collect the data and use the data to ensure that there are safe campuses. Safe campuses for everyone, because if it is safe for women and girls, it's safe pretty much for everyone. We love working with men and boys because they are part of the solution. A lot of young boys before the age of 16 are also abused, and it's even harder for them to report it. And it is when we share these stories and create a safe space to exchange these ideas that we can start to solve the problem. No matter where you come from, this data is useful. This is a sabha or a meeting in Delhi. And this you can have on your college campus too, where using the data, you engage the right stakeholder, like either the police or your campus authorities, and ask, how are you going to make that change happen? How are you going to help us make this a safer space? Is it only our responsibility at an individual level, or is it a societal issue? I believe that sexual and gender-based violence is a societal issue, and it is up to each of us to solve it. This is another case in Delhi where the police invited the youth to come to the police station not only when things are wrong, but on a normal day to have a cup of tea. And truly, data can really help you in building trust. What have we achieved thus far? We are the largest crowd map on this topic. We have over 18,500 stories. Do check it out. We've engaged over 750,000 citizens and authorities using this data. We've got most of this data through the workshops that we have conducted in schools, colleges, communities, and even corporates. We work with partners in several countries and also with several police forces. And these are the many ways that one can use the data. People often ask us, but what about that individual person who wants help? There are many NGOs who we are affiliated to who can provide legal services and counseling services. But in my view, a lot of people still don't have the courage to break their silence. If you only have the courage to anonymously share your report, we can still make that change in the system by the collective data that we generate. And you will benefit because you would have safe transport, safe cities, safe campuses, and safe neighborhoods. You could also use that data along with your communities to make that representation. So these are our coordinates. Do get in touch. We also have a missed call for those who don't have access to internet or any device. So I'm going to stop over there and I'm going to check if there are any questions for me.
Thank you so much, Elsa Marie.
Thank you.
We don't have any questions on the chat feed. But for the benefit of our viewers, perhaps you could repeat what is the name of the app so that we can all identify it easily on the Play Store and App Store and download it right away. What are the keywords? Safe City, all one word.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, it's a great initiative that you've developed this app so that individuals can report anytime that they're in a vulnerable situation. So, and the results that you have showed us earlier on the slide, I think it's a great initiative, and all I can say is hats off and kudos to you for taking this initiative and making it happen.
Thank you. So I do want to say that data in a way helps also make the problem visible. So whilst it's being called a shadow pandemic, a lot of people suddenly express surprise that during COVID-19, domestic violence cases have increased, right? Now, those who've been working in the space have always known that it's been a problem, affecting 33% of the 50%. Yet, a lot of leaders had never even thought about it. So it's very important that we make this issue visible. And if we are leaders, to constantly think of our privilege and note how can we make our spaces safer for women, for the vulnerable, the other genders, because we have to think about these things. It's time's up. We can't say that we are now heading into 2021 and this is going to continue.
Right. So on that note, Elsa Marie, thank you very much. And there were so many nuggets of information, but one that really struck me, and I would use this as maybe the concluding remark, and that's something that we can all maybe use as a takeaway. Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights. I think that has really the highlight of your speech. And if we can just walk away with that one takeaway from your entire speech, I think we have done well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. So we shall move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a panel discussion on the societal structures and their cross-sectional impact. This session is going to shed light on the nature of society and its impact on people across divisions of gender, caste, class, sexualities, and disabilities. Before I introduce the panelists and the moderator, we have a short video from Smashboard to give us an introduction to the panel discussion. Let us roll the video, please.
What I would like to see change after Hathras and immediately after Hathras is firstly the implementation of the Prevention of Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Atrocities Act. The sad reality is there hasn't been a single conviction under Section 4 till date under the Atrocities Act. So we will have to implement Section 4.
When the atrocities happen against the Dalit, these people, the Savarna upper class, Savarna caste people are continuously giving their silent response. So I'm strongly saying that your silence is also one of the apartheid for us. So break your silence, educate your people.
जितने भी हमारे फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैं, हमारे आर्टिकल 14 से लेके हमारे आर्टिकल 32 तक, जितने भी सारे आर्टिकल्स का बुरी तरह से हनन हुआ है वहां पे, वो हम लोग देख सकते हैं किस तरह से, मतलब जो कानून बनाने वाले हैं उन्हीं लोगों ने कानून की धज्जियां उड़ाई हैं।
इसी ब्राह्मणवादी सोच, इसी जातिवादी सोच के चलते हमारी कितनी बहनें कुर्बान हुई हैं, हमारी कितनी बहनें अपनी जान गंवा बैठी हैं और हमारी बच्चियों के साथ इस तरीके की चीज़ें होती ही जा रही हैं कि उनको इतनी आसानी से उनका बलात्कार करके उनको मार काट के फेंक दिया जाता है, जिंदा जला दिया जाता है।
The criminal justice system is one that has been structurally designed to oppress Dalit, Bahujan, Adivasi communities. So I think, on the whole, an investment in carving a feminist imagination that is not just anti-caste but is also anti-carceral, in my opinion, is crucial. And I think it's time that we, center voices of women from these communities in this conversation and in building this imagination.
Any women's movement, they talk about the domestic violence. But for women, Dalit women, it was water, it's wages, it's physical safety. It's a much, much more basic point that you're talking about. So all these other issues, which are basically issues of right to life and livelihood, they were not taken up. So all of us lost out.
Something which is very painful is that when we were talking about sexual violence, the person who goes through sexual violence lives with that identity of that she has committed a crime instead of the person who has committed or the man who have committed crime. And I must say that in most of the time, these girls or young women, they are left alone. So if there are not strong activists with them, it will be difficult for them to get justice.
So at one point, you're happy that people are waking up finally. At another level, it's just sheer disappointment that now you're waking up.
We need to do some reflections, retrospections, and that's where our intersectional, praxis comes into play. And we need strategic alliances, strategic solidarities, because these decades of no conversation, no dialectic is not going to get erased immediately because a momentum has arrived.
As there is no separate law for gender-based violence within the anti-caste laws in India, there is a lot of confusion as to while filing the cases or taking it to the court. So it's highly important for a separate law that deals with the rape of Dalit women, deals with the rapes of women at the margins of both caste and gender.
I think one of the things that is so crucial for us to reckon with as a society and as a global community dedicated to eradicating gender-based violence is that India's culture of caste is a culture of rape. and that in many ways the reasons why we've seen such deep impunity towards the victim of Hathras and so many other victims of caste-based sexual violence is because people do not care about the life of a Dalit. So for that to change, the entire mechanisms of impunity must change.
All right, folks. So that was a video from Smashboard. As promised, we will start the panel discussion in about 30 seconds time. We'll get the all of our panelists and moderator organized. So it'll take about a few seconds. Stay with us. In about 30 seconds time, we will start the panel discussion.